Good. 44.60, or some people looking around, I saw 44.6 written down. Either of those would work. Okay, again, to the hundredths, we've got 59, essentially 59 cents. Rounded up one would be 60 cents. Good. And the last one, 3.048. What'd you have for that one if you rounded it to the hundredths, Cash?
0.05.
3.05, right?
Yeah.
That's all right. 3.05. Very good. Okay, so like I said, we did these for warm-ups because when we took our last summative, the rounding piece was really rough. A lot of us were not rounding correctly. So we're going to review rounding the next couple of days. There will be an explicit rounding section on your next test where you are going to have to show me that you can round numbers, and that will count for points. Okay, so it will be on your study guide. We'll look at it in class. Okay, but again, whatever place value you're rounding to the whole number, look next door. 4 or lower, it stays the same. 5 or higher, it rounds up. And you ignore everything that's past that. Okay? All right. We're going to finish your notes from yesterday. So you can go ahead and flip to those ones that had the flaps. Then we're going to do a little bit of practice. All right. So summative for percents. We talked about this yesterday, but just to reiterate, we are likely looking at a topic 10% summative next Friday, okay, which is also the last day of third quarter, so there will not be retakes on that summative. I will get you a study guide either Friday of this week or Monday of next week, but likely this week and next week we'll be working and then testing at the end of the week. No retakes, okay? So yesterday we started talking about and taking notes on how to convert between decimals and fractions and all that. Let's review what we talked about yesterday, and then we're going to fill in these last two flaps. So starting with, let's see if you can do this without looking. How do I go from fraction to decimal? So if I have a fraction and I want to turn it into a decimal, so today is 122 out of 177. How did I get the decimal, Aria? Yeah, it's an unsolved division problem. I'm going to divide. Numerator divided by denominator. Very good. What about if I was going the other way? If I had a decimal and I wanted to put it in fraction form. So let's pretend I have today's decimal, 0.689. I wanted to get the fraction of it.
Say it out loud and then simplify.
Yeah, say it out loud with that place value language and then simplify it. So the decimal that represents today, 0.689, is 689 thousandths. So I would write that as 689 over 1,000, and then I would simplify that down. Good. What about if I had a fraction and I wanted to turn it into a percent? So thinking about a test score, and I want to know what percent is it that I got on my test. How would you turn a fraction to a percent, Anna?
You would divide the numerator by the denominator and then multiply it by 100.
Perfect. Numerator divided by denominator times 100. Excellent. And then what about if I wanted a percent and I wanted it to go back to a fraction? So if I knew it was 68%, let's just use 68%. How would I write 68% as a fraction? Uh-oh. Percent means out of 100. So what would I do with 68% to put it as a fraction? Ellie? Very good. Any percent can be written over 100 because it's out of 100%, and then you're right, we want to simplify that fraction. Excellent. All right, so the last two we need to look at today are how do we get from a decimal to a percent and a percent to decimal. These two forms are probably the easiest two to convert between. Super easy. So if we're looking to go from decimal to percent, so let's pretend I have the decimal 0.32, and I want to turn it into its percent equivalent. Who can read and tell us what we would do? What's it tell us? It's on your flap. Evie?
Move the decimal 2 places to the right.
Yeah, I'm literally going to take the decimal. 0.32 is 32%. All we got to do is move the decimal 2 to the right. Let's try a different one. What if I had 0.325 now? What percent would that be if I move my decimal 2 spaces to the right? What percent would that be, Ramona?
32.5%.
Excellent. Still moving it 2 places to the right. I'm going to end up at 32.5%. Nice job. Now, I had somebody first period ask an excellent question. They said, well, what if it's not 0 point something? What if the decimal we have is like 1 point something, 1.14?
You
Still move the decimal, so what percent would that be? 114%, which makes sense. If it's more than one whole is 100%. Those are equivalent, right? So if it's more than one, it's going to be more than 100%.
I'm confused because it says move the decimal 2 places to the left.
You're looking at the wrong flap. You're looking at percent to decimal. We're going from decimal to percent. Oopsies. Okay, let's try one more. What if I don't have 2 decimal places to move it? What if it's just like 0.8? Then what do I do? Panic and scream?
Yeah.
Seems like a good idea.
Don't
you Or, Grant?
You just add a 0 and then move it to the right place.
Yeah, I can still move it, and then I'm going to fill in with a 0, so that's going to be 80%. All 4 of those are... Somebody panicked and screamed next door is what happened. They were like, no decimal places, and fell.
Sammy did that like.
Okay, all 4 of those are really good examples to have under your flap. So make sure under the decimal to percent flap, you've listed all 4 of those examples. They are all good examples of how we go from decimal to percent. So then if we have a percent and we want to go back to decimal, if to go from decimal to percent, we move the decimal 2 to the right, how do you think we're going to turn a percent back to a decimal? 2 to the right. They're opposite. Left. Thank you. Yes, 2 to the left. See, now you've got me all confused. All right, so let's pretend I have 96%. Oh no, there's no decimal there. Whatever shall I do?
Put it at the end.
Yeah, every decimal or every whole number has an invisible decimal at the end. So we're pretending it's at the end there. We're going back 2 to the left. 96% is 0.96. Very good. What about 7%? Yep, we're going to have to add some zeros. So move over 2, fill in here. We're going to have 0.07. 7% is 0.07. Okay. Get all of those examples down. And you're going to do some practice with this. Evie.
Is this what our homework's on?
Yes, so your homework is going to be practicing that. We're going to do some with partners here in just a minute. Quick practice together. And then you're going to try some independently for homework tonight. Okay?
Partner cards.
No. All right. So let me pass out what we're going to do. I'm going to explain to you what you're going to do. And then, actually here, I think I have it up here. So you're going to get a worksheet that this is on the front side, and it's just tables where you're going fraction, decimal, and percent. Again, these 2 columns, decimal to percent and percent to get decimal, moving back and forth between these 2 should be pretty quick because you're literally just moving your decimal 2 to the left or 2 to the right, depending on which form you're going to, okay? So those should be fast. It's when you're adding the fraction in where it gets a little bit more complicated. Take your fraction, divide numerator divided by denominator, there's your decimal. Getting the fraction, read it using place value. I don't expect you to have all of these conversions memorized right now. What I do expect is if you're doing this and you forget how to do something, you're looking at your notes and reading what it tells you on the back of the flap to help you out, okay? All fractions when you do this are going to need to be simplified. So I might start by saying, okay, this is 85/100ths, 85 over 100. Oh, but I know those are both divisible by 5, so I'm going to simplify it down, okay? So I'm going to pass it out. This worksheet is double-sided. You are only doing this side of it. It says comparison trios at the top. The back side we're going to come back to another day this week. I just wanted to save paper, so I copied it double-sided. No, we're doing this right now. So I'm going to pass this out tomorrow. So again, you can use those notes when you're doing your homework. All right, that paper can go in your math folder, orange math folder. We will not be doing the back side until probably potentially tomorrow, if not Friday. We'll be looking at the back of that, okay? All right, so we're going to look at one more quick thing together, and then whatever time is left is going to be yours to start on your homework. And this is something that we actually talked about back when we were looking at our integers unit, but I just want to refresh it. Is comparing and ordering fractions, decimals, all of that. So specifically what we want to get into is, not that, if, for example, I were comparing 1/3 and 0.3, so a fraction to a decimal, can we compare those as is right now? No. Unless you have your conversions memorized, you're not going to be able to compare those easily. So what do we need to do? You started to say it.
To turn the decimal into fraction.
Okay, so we could turn the decimal into a fraction and say, okay, this is 3/10, right? Or
We can turn the fraction into this one.
turn the fraction into a decimal. If I turn them both into fractions, before I can compare them, then I have to get a common denominator. So there's a lot of work involved in that. So I think what's going to be easier is instead of turning this decimal into a fraction, let's turn our fraction into a decimal. Using your calculator, give me the decimal version of 1/3, please. Use your calculator to give me the decimal version of 1/3.
0.33.
All right, so 0.33 repeating. So once I have those decimals and I've got everything in the decimal form, still the easiest way to compare these two things is to make sure my decimals go out to the same place value. So right now I've got 33 hundredths, I stopped that at the hundredths place, and 3/10, I stopped that at the tenths place. Okay, what's going to make them the easiest to compare is if I have them going to the same exact place value. So what can I add here to make that go to the hundredths place as well? Evie?
A 0.
Yeah, so I can make the 0.30. So now I'm looking at 33 hundredths versus 30 hundredths. They're both being measured out of the same thing, hundredths. 33 hundredths is going to be bigger. Okay, so that's what we want to do. I've got 2 and, oh, Evie, go, or Ellie, go ahead.
Didn't you also know that because if you convert it to
Yeah, so if you put them in fraction forms and looked for equivalent fractions, yes, that would work as well. Yep. Okay, so looking at this one, these don't go to the same place value. I've got 2 and 500 thousandths, or 2 and 5/10. What can I add to the 2 and 5/10 to make it go to the same place value? Anna? Yeah, I can add 2 zeros. 2 and 500 thousandths and 2 and 500 thousandths.
Oh, I think it's 2,000.
Equal.
Equal, not 2,000. Those are decimals. It's kind of blurry.
Crazy.
All right, I've got 85 thousandths or 84 hundredths. What can I add to make them go to the same place value? Which one should I adjust? Allie? Yeah. So now I've got 85 thousandths or 840 thousandths. Yeah. Why do we think, or what do you think sometimes throws people off there for that one if you don't add the 0? What common mistake do you think people make? Aria?
Like, wait, I forget.
I feel like they would think like the thousands or
Could think the thousandths are bigger. What else, Evie?
Like ignoring the first, or the second, or yeah, the first digit after the decimal and thinking since 85 is bigger than 84.
Yeah, so ignoring that 0, oh, it's just a 0. 85 is bigger than 84 and making the 85 thousandths bigger. But when we make them both out of thousandths, oh my gosh, 85 thousandths is so much smaller than 840 thousandths. You can't just ignore a 0 that's in the middle of the problem. So just making sure we're paying attention to that. And we're going to practice this more tomorrow. Okay, same deal for if I'm ordering numbers. So if I'm trying to put 325 thousandths, 329 thousandths, and 32 hundredths in order from least to greatest, let's make our 32 hundredths go to the thousandths like the rest of them. Now they're going to be pretty easy to put in order. Which one's our smallest one there? 320, 325, or 329? 320. So we've got 320 thousandths. What comes next? 325 thousandths, and then 329. Good. All right, last one. This one says use a greater than, less than, or equal symbol to compare 41 hundredths to 1/4. What should I do with these numbers before I can compare? Turn your fraction into a decimal. What's the decimal form of 1/4? Don't tell me 1.4. Lola?
Pardon the interruption. Can I have Caleb Ballard to the office? He's leaving for an appointment.
Yep.
Thank you.
0.25. Now, 41 hundredths versus 25 hundredths.
The 0.41.
41 hundredths is going to be bigger there. Okay? So again, turning them into the same format to the same place value is going to be our best bet. Okay? Questions on that? This is your homework. You don't have to do the coloring piece. Okay? All right. I'm going to pass out your homework to you and explain to you what is expected for the homework, and then you're going to have the rest of the class to work. So, this paper that you're getting from from me right now is a color by number paper. So you'll see the back side has a coloring page to it. I do not care, even for half a second, if you do the coloring or not. You might say, I don't care to color, I don't want to color, bless you, I'm not doing that. That's fine. So all I care about, bless you, is that you do the math of it. Okay. Put your pencil down and look up here because the directions are not as clear on here and I want to make sure you understand exactly what I'm asking of you. So on this side there are 16 boxes. Each of those boxes has a number in it. So for example, the first one says 85%. I want you to give me the other two forms of that number. So I gave you the percent. You're going to give me the simplified fraction and the decimal in that box. Then you're going to go to the next one. It says 6/15. I'm giving you the fraction. You're going to give me the decimal and the percent. You are going to ignore this section at the bottom that has the colors and the numbers. Ignore that completely unless you're going to color it. And even still, if you want to color it, do all of the math at the top and then go to the boxes at the bottom. The boxes at the bottom will confuse you if you're trying to pay attention to those because it's got two different answers in it and they don't match, okay? So if you want to color it, do all of the math and then find one of the answers you put in a color and that will tell you what color to use, okay? So I give you one form, you're going to give me the other two equivalent forms and that's all you have to do, okay? You've got about 5 minutes to get started now. I would prefer that you try this independently so that you know exactly what you can do on your own without a partner since we did partner practice earlier. So take a couple minutes, see if you can get maybe the top row or so done before you leave here, okay?